It's a long story, so it's difficult to remember. But yeah, so do you want me to tell it? Or? All right.
Is your sign?
Oh.
Go for it.
All right. My name is Helen Mar Kimball. I'm the daughter of Apostle Heber C. Kimball. I was married to Joseph Smith in 1843. Earlier that year, my father had come to me and asked me if I thought it would be right if he said that plural marriage was right in the eyes of God. And I got really angry, and I said no, it wouldn't be right, because it had gone against all of my ideas and traditions. And that was unique, because that was the first time I'd ever gotten angry with my father, or at least expressed it to him. And I loved him very much, but then he said, Helen, I'm telling you it is right. And he explained to me why it was again to be established on the earth. So I went into my room, and I thought for a long time, and it seemed really wrong to me, but I knew in my heart that my father would never do anything but the best for me, and that's eventually what convinced me that it was the right thing to do. However, I later learned that actually the prophet told me that he had discussed it with my father beforehand, and in order to be more closely connected with the prophet, they had arranged the marriage. So I wrote in my journal that...
You're like 26.
Hello. I wrote in my journal that my father only had one ewe lamb, that he willingly laid her on the altar. So the prophet came to my house later to more fully convince myself and my mother of the necessity of plural marriage. So what finally convinced me was the assurance that he gave me that if I were sealed to him, I and my entire family would go to the celestial kingdom. So I agreed. My mother took a little bit more convincing because she had seen many of the other ladies before me married to Joseph Smith, and a lot of the pain that they had gone through she'd seen. But she eventually submitted herself to my father. Later, after I was sealed later that year, the prophet in 1843, I wasn't allowed to go to dances or social functions or parties with my brother because the prophet warned my father to keep me away. I'm not sure why. But then the prophet died the next year. He was murdered in Carthage. And so my father went out of the country, and he wrote me letters telling me to be a good girl and not to tell anyone how I was feeling, because if I did, I'd be guilty of betraying my family. So I never told anyone, but I wrote a whole lot in my journal. And later, my father married 39 other women, so my mother, who was so opposed to the idea of polygamy at the beginning, was subjected to it herself. And later in my life, I wrote a poem about a lot of the hopes and dreams that I have, because I was never married or had children again, because since my father was assured a place in the celestial kingdom if I was sealed to Joseph Smith, I was never supposed to be sealed to any other man. So I had a lot of hopes for love and for children, and they were never really fulfilled. And it wasn't worth it for this life, I wrote in my poem, and I hope that it's worth it in the next. So that's it.